What's up, everyone? It's ya boy, Violano Design here. And today we're going to be doing a very simple text box engine. I haven't found too many, you know, good examples of a very simple text box engine that is easy for beginners to digest. So this is meant to be one that's just, meant to get you off the ground. Here's an example of what it's going to look like. So super simple, as you can see. There's no, scrolling text or anything. It's just getting the bare bones, so that way you can build off of it. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create our sprites here. Make sure that we have precise collision checking turned off and the origin centered on these guys. Next, we're going to create our NPC that we're going to talk to. This is also going to be centered and precise collision checking turned off. Just kind of have a basic block to run into. This one, you can leave the origin basically up at 0, 0. And finally, a text box for our text to go on. You don't have to worry about precise collision checking with this one, as it's not going to have any collision data, but we do want to take the origin and put it down at the very bottom left, so it's easy enough to place it in the game. So this has got a height of 80, so I'm just going to put it down at y of 80, x of 0. Alright, so the first things first, let's just create our room. Just going to label this rm underscore npc room. Just going to make it black. And I'm going to be using views because I know a lot of you might be using views, if you have a larger room, stuff like that. And we're going to be basically placing this text box based on the view rather than just the x and y coordinates of the room. But you don't have to use views on yours if you don't want, but I'm just going to do it for mine. Next, we're going to create our character object. It's going to call it char. I'm just going to start with it facing towards us. Okay, so first things first. Give it a create event. First thing we want to do is we want to make sure this thing is not animating. So stop animating. Next, we want to make it. We want to initialize the variable that's going to contain how fast we can move. So let's call it my speed, and we'll just make it 6. We're gonna say, the character is not talking yet. So this is gonna keep track of whether we are talking or not, which will come into play later. And then finally, we want to just tell it that it doesn't have a script yet. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. So let's make this guy walk. Let's go to the step event. First thing we're going to do is do some input. What's going to happen is we don't want this character to be able to move while he's talking. So we're just going to first put all this inside of a gate here. As long as he is not talking, if not talking, then we can accept input. So for these, we're just going to do the 4 different directional keys. So I'm just going to call this key left, key right, key up, key down. And this is just going to equal, all these are going to be Booleans, basically, which means true or false. We're going to do a keyboard check for left. And we also don't want the character to run into or to be able to pass through any solid objects. So we're going to do a place free. And for this, we're going to do X. Since we're moving to the left, we're going to be checking for however fast we're about to move to the left of us. So X minus my speed. And then checking on just the Y. So for the right, we're just going to go for the right. And then we're just going to do plus my speed because we're checking to the right of us, positive on the x-axis. For the upwards one, we're going to do checking for up. And this one, we're going to do x and then y minus my speed because we're on the y-axis now. And then for down, we're just going to check down here, and we're going to check y plus my speed. So going downwards, remember positive, downwards is positive in GameMaker. Next, we're going to make it so we can start moving based on this input. We're only going to move when these equal true or not. So we're going to store these inside of two variables for horizontal and vertical movement. So that's horizontal movement is going to be negative KL, because what we want is when you press left, we want that to equal a negative one. So we're going to be, because we're going to be multiplying that, so that way we can move to the left. Plus positive KR, so key right, times my speed. And then from vertical movement, negative K up, because remember upwards is negative, plus key down, positive, times my speed. And then finally we're going to commit the movement on the x and y axis. X plus equals, so increment x by h move. Increment y by v move. And if you think about this, h move is basically going to equal 1 or negative 1 or 0 times my speed, which was 6 when we first set it up. So it's either going to be positive 6 or negative 6 or 0. Same thing for the y. Let's test it out. So as you can see, you can move up, down, left, right. Alright, let's get Mario here animating. Just going to go back into that step event, and we're just going to put this in between, so that way we do our movement committing last. So if key left, if key right, if key up, if key down, and we're just going to change his sprite into the various ones that he has here. So sideways, so for left and right it'll be sideways, and all we're going to do is flip over his sprite over on the x-axis. So we'll just say image x scale equals -1, And then if we're going to the right, it'll be +1. Moving downwards, or upwards, we'll say up, down for down. Now this is all great and all, but it's not going to animate if you have any animations on yours at this point, as you can see. So we need to just add in that little piece, and this is the last thing we'll add. So basically we'll just say, as long as we are not pressing key right and not pressing, or key left, key right, key up, and not pressing key down, then image speed equals 0, else image speed is something other than 0, like 0.3. And he stops animating when we let go of the keys. Just a really bare bones movement. We'll quickly make these oil drums here solid and place them in the room. We'll test it out, make sure he can't collide with anything or can't go through anything. Okay. And we'll slow those animations down as well. And we're going to now add in our NPC. We're going to make him solid as well, so we can't go through him. So we're going to start off by making him animate slow. And now we need him to basically detect when the character is touching him, and then when we press the space bar, it'll display the text box. Step event. So here's how this is going to work. Let's bring up Photoshop here. The sprite that I've used for Donkey Kong is 92 pixels wide by 64 pixels tall. And we basically want to create a zone around him that will detect Mario when he comes into contact with him. It looks something like that, that we won't be able to see it in the game. The origin, remember, of this character is in the middle, and so we're basically going to be subtracting a certain, like, basically the width of, or half of the width of this sprite, and then plus a little bit more, and then adding the width, that, you know, half of the width plus a little bit more. So basically we're going to be doing, 46, so basically x minus 46 and then plus more, so maybe like 54 or something, and then plus 54, and then for the y-axis it'll be 40 and then minus 40. So we're going to do that with a collision rectangle. So we'll say for x1, y1, we'll do x minus 54, because we're taking that origin, subtracting basically half of his width plus a little bit more. and then y will be subtracting half of the height and then a little bit more. X2 then will be x plus 54. Y2 will be y plus 40. The object that we are looking for is the character. The precision, for precision collisions, we can just say false. And then not me will be true, meaning don't search for a collision with himself. So if a collision does occur, we're going to now jump inside of Mario with a with structure. And we are going to be basically handing over Mario a script. Now we haven't made this script yet, but we will in just a second. Also, if you remember, we set this script up as being nothing to start out with, and when we touch Donkey Kong, it's going to change that into the script that we're going to create. So right here, we'll just create a script. I'm just going to call this scr_npc1, and you can see that it gets colored. Here's a little illustration of what is basically happening. When he collides with Donkey Kong, he hands Mario the script, basically what he's going to say, and Mario is going to then hand the text box that same script. So this text box will know what to display. Now, for this script, we're going to set it up basically so it will say exactly what he's going to say. Though in this script, you can have a different script for each NPC, and you can run decision structures within this. So, you know, like what part of the game are we in? You know, maybe if we're in chapter 1, maybe the character will say this and that. Maybe if we're in chapter 2, it'll say something totally different. Or maybe you brought them an item, So you can run all those conditionals in here, but for right now we're just gonna be, this character's only gonna say one thing. So basically, we're going to be handing off. See, this script is going to be given to the text box object when we create it, and so the text box is actually going to be running this script. So everything that happens in here basically belongs to the text box. So we're going to be giving the text box an I variable of 0, which is going to keep track of which line we are on. Next, we're going to create the array that's going to contain all the different text. So we'll say something like and finally, there's a function that is missing that exists in GameMaker 1.4 and and beyond, called array length. But it doesn't exist for GameMaker 8, so we're gonna have to do just store it by hand. So text length equals 2. So that basically we just put whatever is the last number here in our text array, and you do that basically for every time you're gonna repopulate this array with different text. You just say how long is this thing. And finally, we're going to create the text box object, give it that sprite, and all it needs is a draw event. Draw sprite. Basically just say sprite index for whatever it's been assigned, subimage of just -1, which just means whatever it's already been assigned, whatever subimage it's on. So maybe it's an animating text box. That means it'll continue to animate. So X is just going to be X, and then Y is just going to be Y. I want to draw the text in a certain color and font. So for the color, we'll have it be white. And the font, we haven't made it yet, but we will right now. Draw set font. And we're going to call this font FNT underscore text box. So let's just make that right now. fnt text box. I'm just going to use Kong text, which you can download online somewhere for free. I don't remember where it is, but just find it. There's that. And then finally, we're going to draw the text. So we're just going to say draw text extended. So this is going to call for basically where we want the text to be drawn at based on the box. So the box, we're just going to say, remember that the origin of this text box is down right here at the bottom. So this is where our values are going to be based off of, bottom left. So we're just going to say x plus 32. We'll say y will go up 56 about. For the text itself, we want to draw what's in that text array. So text of I. Separation, -1 is the default. Just basically means like how far should we separate the lines from each other if it's going to go over multiple lines. And then the width is basically going to be the width of the text box. So we're just going to say minus some of the padding. So we're just going to say sprite get width, and we're just, for the index, we're just going to say our own index. So sprite index minus the padding. So we'll just do like 64. So for the final thing, we're just going to make it so when we press the space bar, the text box will hop up and we can start scrolling through the text. So we're just going to add an event in Mario here. Key press space or whatever button you want. We're going to check to make sure that the text box hasn't been opened yet and to make sure that we have a script, basically. In fact, I forgot one last thing. At the very top here, I'm just going to say script equals no one. Now what's going to happen is when Mario collides with that rectangle around Donkey Kong, this little thing here, as long as he's colliding with that, it's going to be giving Mario that is basically going to be handing him that script every single frame that they're colliding. But if he is not colliding with him, then Mario basically was going to cast aside that script and be like, okay, I don't have anything to give this text box. My hands are empty now. And as soon as he touches him again, okay, he starts handing him the script again. So that basically will make it so we can press the space while not colliding with him, and it won't bring up a text box. So script equals no one while we don't collide. And then when we press space, we're going to say if Mario is not talking and script does not equal no one. So basically, as long as Mario has a script in his hand and is touching the NPC, and as long as he is actually not actively talking to that NPC, and we press the space bar, the following will happen. We're going to set talking to true. So he is now talking. And we're going to create the text box. So we're going to store that inside of a variable, an instance variable. Now, it wants the X and Y of this box. If your room is basically just like a single static room with no views that are going to be bigger than the room itself, or sorry, the views that'll be smaller than the room itself, then you can just use an X and Y value. But most of you are probably going to be using views, so I would use it based on the view. So we're going to go view underscore X view of view 0, which is the default first one. So basically the X location of that view, and then Y will be the Y location of that view. The Y location and the X location are at the very top left of the screen, basically, of the port. So, and we need to move it all the way down. So the Y view, which is 0 to start out with, plus, and we're just going to add basically the height of that view. And then the object, of course, will be the text box. So just to illustrate that a little bit here, remember the view right now is the same size of this room, but your room could be a lot bigger. And the view's X location, as you can see, is at 0 and 0. So that's up at the top here. So initially what was going to happen was this text box was going to start off right at the top left. We wouldn't have been able to see it. And so we basically said, okay, enter the room based on the view and go all the way down to the bottom. Oh, and you can delete this. We're going to run operations now inside the box. So with box, inside of this new box that we created, we're going to be handing off that script from Mario to the text box. Script equals other dot script. So what this means, other, is basically it refers to the object that called the with structure. So since this is Mario, is calling the with structure, other means Mario, or whatever your character is. And then we're still running operations inside the box, which just means that the box is now doing stuff. So the box now is basically, okay, is initializing his script, and now he's also going to start running that script, that same script. So script execute script. Okay, so this is all well and good, but what if we are talking and we press the space bar? That's when we want to start advancing through the text. So we're just going to say else if talking, and we can only start talking if we have a script and we aren't already talking. So we're going to run operations inside the box. We're going to be incrementing that I value, and that I value only exists inside the box. So if I is smaller than text length, right here is where you would normally say like array length 1D, whatever that array is called, text in this case, if you're using a newer version of GameMaker. Then increment I. Also, in newer versions of GameMaker, I'm pretty sure you can just do I++. Else, so if I basically has reached the end of the length of that text, so if we're on the last page of text, then we're going to come back to Mario. So remember, we're inside the text box. So now the text box, even though Mario is running this script, we're running operations inside the text box. So the text box is doing this stuff. And so when the text box calls other, it's going to refer to the person who called this with structure. We're basically saying, okay, your talking is over. You are not talking anymore. And destroy yourself. He's gone through all of his text, and now it's time to go away. Also, don't forget to comment your code, because it makes it a lot easier to come back to it. So we're going to say standing next to NPC ready to talk And then this one will be advancing the text. Advance text. Done talking. All we have to do now is just put Donkey Kong in the room. And try her out. So when we press space by itself, nothing happens. But when we go up to Donkey Kong, there it is. Obviously, there's a lot better ways to make this. This is just like a really quick and dirty way. For those, you can extend this endlessly. You can do all sorts of stuff with it. All right, well, thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time.